In the previous episode, we delved into a pivotal phase of Frank Lloyd Wright's life, witnessing his architectural renaissance with the creation of iconic houses like the Millar and Freeman House. However, personal tragedies, including the devastating fire at Taliesin, brought economic setbacks. Now, join us as we embark on the next chapter of Wright's journey. Overcoming challenges and embracing new opportunities, Wright continues to shape the architectural landscape. During these years, he initiates several projects, yet none come to fruition. Among them is a complex he designed in Hollywood near Los Angeles, which remains unrealized. This significant office tower that he envisioned also failed to materialize during this period. This intriguing project, later repurposed by the Guggenheim, as we'll explain shortly, also remained unrealized. The Cathedral of Steel, a colossal municipal project, showcased his ambitious vision and scale. Note the drawings featuring the pyramids of Egypt and the Eiffel Tower to provide a sense of its dimensions. However, this grand endeavor also faced the fate of remaining unrealized. And finally, this one, the most improbable of all, a series of office towers planned for Sandmarks in New York City. Unfortunately, this one too couldn't materialize. However, similar to the previous project, it found a new life in the Guggenheim, as Wright repurposed it to create the Price Tower. These are projects that never materialized but left lasting imprints on his subsequent work. Over these 10 years, he undertook 5 projects. For a man who had constructed 100 buildings in 15 years, he now found himself seemingly abandoned. Throughout all this, Giovanna was his rescuer. When he was completely bankrupt, as it happened periodically, his friends decided to establish Frank Lloyd Wright, Incorporated. This meant that, from then on, he no longer belonged to himself. He belonged to everyone who had bought shares of Frank Lloyd Wright. These shareholders included his sisters, former clients, friends, writers who had defended him. Essentially, anyone associated with Frank Lloyd Wright purchased shares. The essence of this arrangement was to ensure that they would collect the architect's fees, the fruits of his creative work, and provide him with just enough to live on. However, they also made sure he wouldn't go bankrupt again with outlandish ideas. This document from Frank Lloyd Wright Corporation was crucial as it rescued him from financial ruin, managed his affairs since he no longer owned himself. Most importantly, Olgivanna played a vital role. After parting ways with Miriam Noel following their divorce, he met a Montenegrin dancer and disciple of Gurdjieff, 30 years his junior, who fascinated him. Unlike his previous tumultuous relationship, Olgivanna brought stability and support to his life. More importantly, she introduced the concept of a commune, drawing from her experience in a Gurdjieffian sect. This commune, referred to as the Fellowship, allowed Wright to survive. It was essentially a sect with disciples who called themselves the Fellowship. Olgivanna's influence not only stabilized Wright's life, but also gave him the now house, a concept derived from her experience in Gurdjieff's community. Olgivanna's impact was profound, providing stability, security, support, and a new approach to life through the fellowship. So, what Olgivanna did, besides giving him a daughter who also played a significant role, was essential. The daughter of Olgivanna, present at their wedding, allowed them to marry after many years together. This was because Miriam Noel, who was a bit unstable, not only refused to grant them a divorce but also pursued them legally. She managed to have them arrested for crossing state borders with dishonest intentions, citing a then-existing American law. Consequently, Wright ended up being arrested alongside his companion, the dancer, due to a perceived federal offense when crossing state lines. It was a chaotic period in his life. Suddenly, Olgivanna proposed a solution. Despite the prosperity of the 1920s, with architects flourishing and money flowing, Wright achieved nothing substantial. However, a depression, starting with his relationship with Olgivanna, led to the creation of what became known as Taliesin. Taliesin was intended to be more than just an architectural firm. It was envisioned as a school or commune where aspiring individuals paid a fee, worked in agricultural and project-related tasks, received food and accommodation in return, and became part of a learning community. This setup, resembling Gurdjieff's approach, attracted young talents who were dazzled by the master's abilities. Wright also took another significant step by writing his autobiography, published in 1932, the same year he established the fellowship. The autobiography was a success, brilliantly written yet largely fictional when compared to factual documents. Despite its creative liberties, it became one of the great American autobiographies, showcasing extreme talent and vigor. This publication added to Wright's popularity. Interestingly, 1932 is often considered the year when the modern movement officially arrived in America. The landmark exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, on the International Style, curated by Philip Johnson and Alfred Hitchcock, played a pivotal role in introducing modern architecture to the American audience. Frank Lloyd Wright was in such low esteem at the time that he was allocated a very modest place at the International Style exhibition. His position was between Raymond Hood and Richard Neutra, the latter having been both his employee and student. Wright was initially reluctant to participate, stating that he wouldn't want to be placed between Hood and Neutra. However, he was persuaded by Lewis Mumford, a critic and writer who had always been a staunch supporter. Mumford told him that there was no more honorable place than being crucified between two thieves. With this statement, Mumford convinced Wright to participate, albeit in a relatively secondary position at the exhibition. Because the MoMA was focused on Europe, cosmopolitan urbanism, and Wright seemed like a romantic American ruralist, outdated and not fitting into the MoMA's vision. The MoMA was all about Europe and new ideas, and Wright's ideals seemed Emersonian, somewhat lost in time. However, Olgivanna founded the fellowship, published his autobiography, and suddenly he returned to the forefront of attention with a handful of extraordinary works. Despite being in his 60s, the master showed that he was very much alive, and one had to take him seriously regardless of what the MoMA thought. Taliesin was rebuilt, now the third iteration. Because, of course, no one comes after the fire in 1914, the one involving the black servant who killed 7 people, and then 2 more incidents in 1925. Each time it burned down, he rebuilt it. This is the third Taliesin, constructed to accommodate the fellowship. One of the early students of the fellowship was an interesting young man, what we would now call a dropout, someone who leaves formal education but wants to become an architect. He was the son of a wealthy man who had lived in Europe, had a broad worldview, and joined the fellowship. And this too, honestly, a good part of his commissions came from parents of students. This was extraordinary in this case. The first thing that convinced the father, this student's name is Kaufman, is to pay for this model. That you see here, the students making an enormous model, which took a lot of work to shape, was for his grand anti-urban utopia, his protean agrarian utopia. The city would simply be a network of roads. People would all live in little houses, and suddenly, there would be isolated skyscrapers dotting the landscape. There wouldn't be a city. It would just be a homogeneous field where some buildings would give it some sort of orientation. This manifested the desire to return to an undefined rural setting. Of course, this is why we say that Roger has been so damaging, because he was an advocate for the suburbanization of the world. He may not have built all those houses himself. Well, he built many and designed 400, but he has shaped the American landscape with 400 million houses. The students of the Young Fellowship, here you have it, the model of this Broadwaker. It's a fantastic vision, but it led to something that we are perhaps still dealing with today, the sprawl, the endless extension of the city. In that sense, while Wright was a great architect, he was, for us, a terrible urban planner. However, these ideas had a profound impact, and you can see how they influenced the suburbanization of America, fueled by the automobile. Wright loved cars, and he saw them as a symbol of autonomy and independence. He had expensive, convertible cars, and his affection for automobiles played a role in shaping the American landscape with individual houses, contributing to what they now call sprawl, the indefinite extension of the city. So, in this aspect, Wright, who was a great architect, turned out to be, in our view, a poor urban planner. Nevertheless, here you have the students of the Young Fellowship with the model of this Broadwaker, which he, let's say, conceived in this mythical sketch and later brought to life as this large model seen by the students of Taliesin. He created two extraordinary works. The first one for the father of this young man, Mr. Kaufman. He was, well, a warehouse owner and had a property in Bear Run, south of Pittsburgh. For him, Wright envisioned what we now call the Fallingwater house. Another of the mythical images of modern architecture as it blends that landscape and romantic condition. With its integration of landscape and romanticism, along with the rationality and geometric abstraction of Europe, Fallingwater became an icon that revived and repositioned Wright at the forefront of architecture. It was constructed with considerable difficulty, as expected. The large cantilevers were intimidating to engineers. Additionally, maintaining and repairing it has proven challenging due to the deflection in the structural elements. But that house turned Wright into a legendary architect. And that style, a bit in which the rocks where it was seated were allowed to emerge, in this rural condition of Wright, made him a character who was again in the newspapers and in the debate among architects. The other building from that time that showed that the master was in good health was the Johnson Wax Research Tower, which we have already mentioned in the introduction when I compared it to these aerodynamic forms, buildings that were based on a series of columns. With these sort of capitals, shaped like a lotus flower, because everyone doubted that it could hold up. But in the end, it created this wonderful space, not a hypostyle hall, but a development that also incorporated skylights, similar to Larkin as part of that utopia of the perfect office. The perfect office, as you can see in a vintage photo with the tables, logically designed by Frank Lloyd Wright himself. And his third, a highly significant element of that moment in the year 35 during the Depression, was what he called the Usonian Houses, the Usonian homes, that is, American homes for the real American, affordable houses for the Depression, homes for those who had little money. As a conclusion, in this episode, we've delved into Frank Lloyd Wright's journey through the challenging years, exploring his personal life, setbacks, and the emergence of iconic architectural projects. Join us in the next episode as we navigate further through the chapters of Wright's life and career. Stay tuned for more insights into the fascinating world of this visionary architect. Don't forget, like and subscribe if you found this content interesting. Thank you. See you next chapter of this fascinating life of Frank Lloyd Wright.